The Memphis Grizzlies have been by far one of the most exciting young teams in the entire NBA this year. They also have arguably the most exciting player in the NBA with Ja Morant. But top to bottom, there is so much about this Grizzlies team to like. The way that this team has been constructed has set them up for some really nice long-term success. While I personally believe that they are capable of contending this year, there is no doubt in my mind that they'll be contending for years to come, and I'm going to tell you why. What have they done right? How did they manage to set themselves up better than the rest of these young small market teams in the NBA fighting to become contenders once again? And that's what we're going to be covering in today's video, so be sure to stick around until the end so that you don't miss anything. As always, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So obviously, I should start off talking about Ja Morant. He is an absolute superstar. The leaps that he's taken from last season are super impressive, and he's taken on the role as the leader of this team, as good as you can possibly ask. One major area that he's improved this season is his three-point shooting. Last year, he was only shooting a three-point percentage of 30.3%. This year, he's bumped that number up to 35.5%. This improvement has added a ton to his game because being a more versatile scoring threat is just going to force defenses to plan for you differently. It's not like he's just taking catch and shoot threes either. He's hitting pull-up threes that he's creating on his own. He's also hitting shots off of screens really well. Really, his three-point shooting is just all coming together, and it's made him much more of a lethal scoring threat than he already was. His improvements really are a testament to that third-year leap that I typically expect from players of his caliber. There's no question that he's an all-star this year. He's 100% going to get selected. Now it's just a question of if he's a starter or not. But outside of Morant, there's two players on this roster that I think project to be more than just supporting players. One of those players is Jaren Jackson Jr. While on paper, he's not having quite the season that he did in 2019 and 2020, he's still been a fantastic player alongside Ja Morant. But it's not what he's doing on offense that impresses me. It's what he's doing on defense. Jaren Jackson Jr. is legitimately playing at an all-defense level. He averages the third most blocks per game in the entire NBA with 2.1. He just has such good timing to get a block when there's somebody driving in the lane. One skill that I want to talk about that he has on the defensive end is baiting guys into blockable layups. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Terrence Mann is attacking the basket in transition. Jackson almost looks like he's flat-footed and not ready to contest the shot, giving Mann an almost false sense of security. Mann goes up and Jaren Jackson Jr. goes with him, and he just absolutely swallows the ball away from him. Here's another one. Hero drives and likely almost thinks that he has Jaren Jackson Jr. beat. He goes for the reverse layup, and Jackson is able to get the block. It's this unique ability to bait his opponents into bad layups that allows him to get so many blocks. Some of his other defensive numbers that are really impressive, he's got a block rate of 40.5%, which is the third highest block rate in the entire NBA. His matchups are also shooting 14.9% worse at the rim when he's guarding them. He absolutely deserves to be selected to an all-defensive team if he keeps this up. He has legitimately been fantastic on that end, anchoring a top 10 defense in the entire league. He still needs some work on his fouling, even if he has been a lot better in that department than he was last year. But once he sorts that out and the shot starts to fall, he's going to be an incredible two-way big man. Now, some of you may have already seen my video covering Desmond Bane and his hot streak that he had earlier in the season when Ja Morant was out. Has he cooled off since then? Not at all. He's actually been just as good, if not better. Since Ja Morant returned to the lineup, Desmond Bane is averaging 20.9 points and a steal and a half per game on some absolutely absurd 48, 44, and 83 shooting splits. He is a legitimate second option at this point. He's developed that shot creation ability that he needed to go from a supporting catch and shoot guy to now being a legit second option. And he's not just a great three-point shooter, he's also been fantastic when attacking the rim, shooting 64.5% at the rim on the season. Desmond Bane, in my opinion, looks like a future all-star. Obviously, I don't think his numbers quite get him into the discussion this year, but the level that he's been producing at puts him on a trajectory to take the next step to all-star level. So that's the Grizzlies' big three, but what about the supporting cast? What else does this team have to work with? And the answer to that is a lot. Getting Dillon Brooks back into the fold has done a lot for this team defensively. His scoring looks good, and while he's not the most efficient player in the world right now, the energy and hustle that he brings on the defensive end is something that any team would kill to have. He obviously gets a lot of steals, but one thing that he's really good at is jumping on players who are driving to the basket. On this play, he's guarding Dort on the perimeter, but Ty Jerome is going to try and drive to the basket. Brooks is going to jump the lane when he sees Jerome is driving, and he pokes the ball away to force the turnover. Again, here we can see in this play, Finney-Smith is going to initiate the drive, and once again, Brooks just sticks his arm out to grab the ball, and it results in him getting the steal. He's just a really smart defensive player, and I'd argue he's one of the better defensive wings in the NBA right now. Now, before I start talking about one of the most exciting young players on the Memphis Grizzlies that barely anybody is talking about right now, I do want to make sure that I shout out some of the other supporting guys on this Grizzlies roster. Steven Adams has been playing his role really well, and he fits perfectly alongside Ja Morant. Obviously, you've got guys like Kyle Anderson and Brandon Clarke who are continuing to be great supporting pieces for this team, playing great defense and being able to play their roles on offense really well. Honestly, I could sit here and list their whole roster because this team is so deep. You look at the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. is only playing 27 minutes, and then you realize that Ja Morant is the only player on this team playing more than 30 minutes per game. They are getting contributions from everybody on the roster, and if I were to sit here and tell you everything about every contribution that every player is giving them, we would be here for a really long time. But the one player that I do want to focus on is Ziaire Williams. The Grizzlies drafted him this past offseason with the 10th overall pick. Williams looked like an elite wing prospect in college, with really some of the biggest concerns being about his efficiency. He missed a good chunk of games during the month of December, but since he's returned, he's played a pretty significant role for this team, starting in the last 6 of their 8 games. Over this stretch, he's putting up 9 points in 22.7 minutes with some really promising shooting splits. Right now, the intrigue with Williams is using him as a 3-and-D wing with lob threat aspects to his game just because he's so big and athletic. Think of him like a diet Mikal Bridges right now. He's also looked good operating as a perimeter catch and shoot guy, being a 37% shooter on corner threes this year. But he is only 20 right now, and one of the things that he was lauded for in college was his footwork and shot creation ability. He hasn't had a ton of opportunity to show it yet, but he's got really good ball handling ability at 6'8", and his 6'10" wingspan allows him to hit some tough shots over bigger defenders. As the season progresses, with his role starting to increase more and more, I could see the Grizzlies looking into that area of his game for some untapped potential going forward. Now, I'm not saying that he's a surefire future all-star by any means, but there is certainly reason to be optimistic that his development could have more upside than most realized during the draft. So the big picture question about the Memphis Grizzlies is, are they contenders? And honestly, I can see it. Their path to the finals is definitely not going to be easy. They're likely going to have to go up against some combination of Golden State, Phoenix, Utah, Denver, and Dallas, but they have the depth to match up with just about anybody. It's just a matter of how those teams look when the playoffs roll around and how some of these other Grizzlies players continue to develop throughout the season. I can say with certainty, though, that if these guys continue to develop and Ja Morant continues on his superstar trajectory, this team is going to be contending for years to come. So, do you think that the Grizzlies are contenders? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoy the video, please be sure to subscribe if you're new and leave a like on the video because that's the #1 way to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.